Daniel Gillman here with College.town at the 2026 NCAA Convention in D.C. Joined now by the Summit League Commissioner, Josh Fenton. Josh, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Daniel. Good to be here.
Absolutely. You know, with this ever-evolving sport and every year you can kind of check in, where do you feel like the biggest moves have been made since the House settlement in the summer and the movements from last year's convention to this year's?
Well, I mean, we're at a point where we're implementing the House settlement, and so we're now living in the new world of trying to manage through third-party NIL, kind of outside the system, and obviously now introducing institutional NIL kind of within the system. And there's a lot still yet to be figured out, but I think that's obviously the biggest change from if you took us back 1 year ago to where we are today, and still there's much to figure out.
Yeah, if you were to say and put on a bit of like a looking glass to the next year, where do you feel like the next domino to fall is in this landscape and the conversations to be had this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think we still need to make change in certain areas to allow our industry to operate effectively. We have an injunction around the House settlement. There are rules set up around the injunction. The Autonomy 4 conferences have established CSC, which is managing institutional NIL and third-party NIL. That process is still evolving. But ultimately, kind of the challenges that kind of are in front of us right now are a lot of the things that we're facing in the legal system. And, you know, our industry has been fairly vocal. Me and the Summit League have been vocal about needing some assistance to help us manage through things like athletic eligibility. Now that we do have a injunction related to the House settlement and the benefits that are being provided to student athletes that were there before, but are there now with the opportunity to participate in institutional NIL, revenue sharing as many people like to call it. You know, we need to implement that properly and stop short of having them be employees on our campuses. And so there's a lot, and it's, I suppose, apropos that we're sitting here in Washington, D.C., and our industry has asked quite a bit of lawmakers in D.C., and we're going to need some continued assistance from them in order for us to operate effectively moving forward in the future.
And you mentioned eligibility. You know, what are the discussions like between the members and between the higher-ups in the commissioner's office when it comes to adding years to eligibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think we think of eligibility, and I think of eligibility connected to the academic experience. And so athletic eligibility as a college student, knowing that word college is there and student is there, that they are students on our campuses, should somehow in some way be connected to the academic time frame. And so, you know, the rule that has been in place that, you know, 4 seasons of competition and you can do that over 5 years has aligned, I've thought, nicely with academic timeframes. And so I understand that that's being challenged in the legal system, and we've got now economic reasons as to why maybe that's being challenged. But it's very important, I think, that we stay tethered to the academic time frame in terms of eligibility. What that exactly means, I think that the time will tell and how that plays out. A lot of people want to talk about, you know, 5 years, 5 seasons of competition over 5 years. You know, I don't like to put a number on it. I think what's most important is that we can continue to stay connected to the academic timeline.
Switching locations here and propping up the conference, the Summit League is one of just a few conferences to earn the grants and recognition through the Knight Commission's C.A.R.E model. Can you tell us about that C.A.R.E model and maybe inform those that are not too, you know, educated about it?
Yeah, so the grants are provided to conferences that have demonstrated equity in distributing shared athletics revenue. And so we've got a revenue distribution model within the Summit League where it's revenue from media agreements, revenue related to our basketball tournaments. That's distributed. Those monies are distributed to our members in an equitable manner, and that we do actually have some performance-based distribution models, but those performance-based distribution models around the sport of basketball connected to our tournament are applied equally for both the performance on the women's side and performance on the men's side. And so it's a grant to recognize those that are distributing their shared athletics revenue in an equitable manner. And we've since become a C.A.R.E champion, which is a great honor and a great distinction from the Knight Commission. And I think it speaks to the leadership that we have amongst our presidents in the Summit League as they think about how do we distribute revenue to our members in this equitable manner, and how do we approach things in an equitable manner just in terms of overall experiences for our student athletes. And so really honored by the recognition, the grant, and the recognition of being distinguished as a C.A.R.E champion. And it's great for the Summit League.
Diving a little bit deeper into that equitable term and the way that other conferences might do it, do you see either an expansion of the March Madness tournament or different kind of open futures towards the other sports changing the way that you can divvy out the shares? Or is it something where we are seeing a trend of equality moving forward, that the non-revenue sports can continue to get an even amount?
Well, I think there are a few things there. One, at this convention last year, the membership approved a women's basketball distribution unit. Historic moment. There have been distribution units, performance-based units provided based upon results on the men's tournament for numerous years, and never was that the case on the women's side. And so this membership, the association membership of the Division I side, approved a distribution unit for the women that's equitable in comparison to the value of the media rights agreement applied to women's basketball compared to the media rights agreement value related to men's basketball. And so we are proud to be a part of an association that's doing that. And so any change to the distribution amounts, specifically basketball performance units, both men's and women's, ultimately is a full membership vote. And knowing the move that was made this past year or a year ago with the women's unit, I think people feel pretty good about that. Now, could there come additional unit distributions related to other sports? You've obviously seen a lot of popularity around the sport of volleyball, for example. But there are other sports, and even men's sports, FCS football and maybe ice hockey, things of that nature, that could come to be. That ultimately takes a full membership vote to change the revenue distribution models and units that are distributed out. But as of right now, the performance-based is around men's basketball, which has been there for many years, but now women's basketball for the first time.
You talk about media rights, and when you think about the Summit League, I think the broadcasting setup is something that is very unique, and that you're going into your fourth year as the commissioner of the league. When you started, what was your opinion of the paywall model that the Summit League presented compared to now seeing all of these ESPN Plus deals that all these other conferences have? How do you feel like the Summit League has separated themselves from the other conferences?
Well, I think first it starts with establishing the priorities that you have for media rights, and we've gone through now actually two versions of an analysis and an assessment. The original assessment came when I first started, and we established priorities: broad exposure, revenue, brand building, and then protecting kind of the local relationship, regional relationships that many members have. And what came of that were really two unique relationships that work closely together. On the national linear side, we're very proud of our partnership with CBS Sports Network. Over the past now 2 years, this will be the third year, we've had 9 exposures in the regular season. Very proud to have 2 women's basketball games each of those years on a national linear network. That was the first time in the history of the Summit League that we had a women's team sport exposed on a national linear network, and then the other 7 games were from the men. And then CBS comes in and has done one gender semifinals and then both genders championship games. And the care and the concern that they provide to kind of the storytelling throughout the course of the regular season, then leading into the tournament, has added quite a bit from our brand, and it's been noticed from fans that are out there. So that starts with that one. And then on the streaming side and the digital rights side, we have a unique relationship with a company called Mid-Continent Communications. They have a sports division of it, primarily located in the upper Midwest. Midco Sports is what they're known as. And they established a direct-to-consumer streaming platform, Midco Sports Plus. And we, along with a couple other conferences, are partners with them from a streaming standpoint. And, without getting into the specific details, you go back to the priorities that were established. And both the CBS relationship and the Midco relationship have really hit on those priorities that have been there. We're actually going through the process right now of assessing what may come in the future. And so very similar priorities have resonated, and we'll get to some outcome here in the near future. But the relationship with both CBS and Midco Sports has been tremendous, and I think it's elevated the brand of the Summit League tremendously, and it's been a good experience for fans.
We mentioned the exploding sport of women's volleyball. I work in it broadcasting-wise, and seeing the growth and then entering that conference championship week, seeing the fans really approach it from a die-hard perspective has been so fun to see. Do you see a future where volleyball might find its way onto linear from a championship perspective as well?
I'd love for it to be there. One of the concepts that we've talked to CBS about is how do we find a way to get other sport championship games and their tournaments on potentially their linear platform. And that may be an opportunity in the future. The programming and the schedules of the day in which the championship is being played obviously matter, but volleyball is an important sport for us. To the extent of, and you probably know this given your background in it, again, I'm talking on the women's side, we were one of, I believe, 4, maybe 5 non-autonomy conferences. I think it was 4 non-autonomy conferences this year to have more than one team in the tournament. So we had an at-large team. And I'll take you back to last year. We also, at that point, I think it was one of 2, maybe 3 conferences to have an at-large team. So we've had 2 years in a row where we've had an at-large team in the tournament. And so we've got great volleyball in the Summer League. Really, really good volleyball, great programs, and we see it as a growing opportunity, not only for the sport in and of itself and the competitiveness in our league, but frankly, to help continue to build the brand of the Summer League overall.
Yeah, it feels like a perfect marriage, too, because CBS Sports Network has the professional league, which is now called MLV, the Major League Volleyball. It was Pro Volleyball Federation. So it does feel like there's a good mix there. Towards the future of other mid-major sports streaming, where do you feel like there will be either a combination or a uniformity, I guess, where it's some of the other mid-majors are on that ESPN platform, some of them as well, like the Mountain West has their own separate broadcasting network. Do you feel like there will be an equalization moving forward, or will everybody kind of poach for themselves?
Time will tell. I don't know that anybody can really answer that question accurately. My sense is that as opportunities like the ability to gather data, obviously the ability to monetize in unique ways, the ability to build a brand in unique ways may lend itself to properties looking at unique opportunities. And those unique opportunities may be with a great partner like ESPN. It's a wonderful company. We've got great relationships with ESPN. We just believe for our circumstances of what I explained earlier, there were reasons as to we made the decisions we made. But I think around the topic of do you control your data? If you do, the opportunities that you have to use that data to speak to your fans, to deliver better, more customized experience for your fans. What are the opportunities to generate more revenue beyond maybe the traditional, say, rights fee model? Some of the uniquer type of streaming situations, direct-to-consumer, own branded networks, may present itself as viable options for properties in the future. And, we felt like we've been a bit of a pioneer in this regard, but we also think that it's going to continue to evolve, and we may see more and more of this in the future.
Now, Josh, you spent almost 10 years as the commissioner of the National Collegiate Hockey Conference, and so I want to ask a bit about that, because as we see different sports start to get more exposure, do you feel like there is a future where the rest of the country can add intercollegiate hockey in some capacity, whether it's the Southeast or just the South, or anywhere aside from the Midwest and the Northeast?
Well, my quick answer is I certainly hope so. If I put on my hockey hat, college hockey hat, just for the growth of the sport, the brand of the sport, kids playing hockey in America, really North America, as you think about Canada and even to some extent Europe, it's important that we have more opportunity, and more opportunity comes from more roster spots. More roster spots comes from more programs. The National Hockey League's done a great job of exposing the sport into non-traditional markets and creating passionate, rabid fan bases in these non-traditional markets that love hockey. And so I see that unique opportunity being there for colleges. Now, there are some things that have to be worked through. One, there's an expense to it. That's a very real expense to it. I believe that if the model is set up properly, there's revenue that can offset those expenses to manage it properly. There's an equity component in terms of managing the participation opportunity and the scholarships that are provided and the laundry list from a Title IX perspective that institutions have to think through. But I think my hope, or the college hockey's hope, is that it can grow beyond the traditional kind of niche and regional sport that it has been for decades to something a bit more national. And I would point to programs like Arizona State that have added in the past decade or so, and then even Penn State that's added a program in the past, 15 years or so, and the success that they've had. And so I think college hockey will continue to grow, and it would be great for the sport to see more programs added.
Well, really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel.